College Football Nerds here talking Oklahoma and Texas. I got Josh with me. He's going to get nerdy with y'all as well as myself. And I'm not going to make fun of the name of this game. We all know in our hearts what it's called. Looks like a lot of players coming back on both sides from injury. Josh, more in number for Oklahoma and maybe more in importance for Texas. Though obviously Arch did just fine in place of Quinn Ewers. This is probably what they were holding. I mean, it's pretty clear that that's what they were holding back for. Josh, this game has a pretty large point spread. And I think that for all of the people who like to say you can throw the record books out the window when rivalries play, you might get a little bit of a tighter game, but generally the favored team in rivalry games wins. But let's start off the top about this point spread, because I wonder if it says a little bit about the fact that Oklahoma is who they are, regardless of who's coming back, or that Texas is just that good.
I think the problem is that Oklahoma may just be kind of who they are. When we look at, you can go to collegefootballnerds.com and look at statistical profiles. You can run our model, which we'll talk about later, between any two teams. We have a power ranking, 1 through the end of college football, where we have every team in the model and playing everybody else and then rank them top to bottom. We generate something called relative performance statistics. And what that means is, how did you do against your competition versus how your competition did against everyone else? Rather than saying, oh, you're a 4-yard per carry team, a 5-yard per carry team. If you have, if you rush for 4 yards per carry and your opponents are allowing 5 yards per carry, well, you're only rushing for 80% of what your opponents allow, right? So you're negative 20% in our metric. It's just a purely straight up opponent adjusted metric, one step past standard metrics. I think it's easy enough to understand, and it's just showing you, are you better or worse than what would be expected? And I think what's interesting is Oklahoma's profile, as you would guess, offensively looks worse than defensively, but the numbers aren't as skewed as you would think. Offensively, in rushing yards per game, rushing yards per attempt, passing yards per game, passing yards per attempt, Oklahoma is somewhere between 8 and 11% behind average. Just 8 to 11%. I think most people would expect them to be much lower than that. Their absolute ranks in terms of, like, for example, passing yards per game, they're 111th in the country, only 162. But when we look at it in terms of relative performance, they've played good pass defenses, so we have them 78th. Rushing yards per attempt, for example, 3.6 is pretty anemic, but they've played good competition. We have about 83. They're below average for a Power 5 team. They're not actually atrocious. But on the flip side, Daniel, one of the interesting things to me is defensively, their run statistics are really good. They hold teams 45% below the rushing averages. We talk a lot on this channel about the fact that really good defenses hold teams way below their rushing averages a lot in college football. But from a passing perspective, they hold teams to dead on their passing average and a little bit higher passing yards per game, unsurprisingly, because they throw more than they run. They're only ranked in the 70s in our passing defense stats. And I think that bears it out, Daniel. When you look at their season, how they did against Tennessee, how they did against Auburn, how they did even against like Tulane, they are a little bit vulnerable through the air. And that is not all an injury issue. Offensively, it's hamstrung them from being a better team. I'll say in our total team rankings, we only have Oklahoma 35th. Spoiler, we have Texas 2nd. But I think the problem, Daniel, is that, yes, the offense is bad, but they're bad for known reasons. They're really beat up. Hopefully they get some guys back. They're not going to get everybody back. They are what they are at quarterback. Daniel, I think the problem with Oklahoma is their defense, like relative performance scoring defense, 10th. I think FEI has them about 11th. It's really good, but it's not so good that it can win you football games against elite competition. So they are a really good defense, but merely really good, and a bad offense. And if the defense was better, I think this may be a bit of a different conversation. But the defense, it being what it is, kind of keeps them from being a more competitive team in this context.
I think that Oklahoma's defense is better than pure numbers. I think that they've got a really, really good defense, but borderline elite defense. But the problem for me is it's the Iowa problem, right? Like, even if you have an elite defense, which Iowa has had a really good defense that doesn't scale well against elite offenses, I think Oklahoma's defense could play pretty well against elite offenses, but their offense is so bad that, or it has been so bad. We'll see. New quarterback, couple of games under his belt. We'll see if it gets better, but it just puts your defense in such really precarious situations where they're facing constantly short fields. They're on the field a lot, lots of 3 and outs and that sort of thing. It just weighs on you, and it shows up in the scoreboard. On the flip side, you got a Texas team that, Texas fans are going to bristle at this a little bit, and is in no way meant as a slight, but there's 2 things about this Michigan game, one in Texas's favor and one that's not in their favor. The Michigan game is kind of what the feather on their cap for this year. And look, they handle their business on the road in a way that showed that obviously they're in a level above Michigan, many levels above. But Michigan sucks. That's a one-dimensional team that should have lost to Minnesota 2 weeks ago. They're a mediocre at best team, in my opinion. But Texas could have beaten Michigan worse than they did. Like, they could have beaten them 50-10 if they wanted to, the way that was going. So it's hard to just look at like point spreads or how the final stats of that game. Texas was dominant. My issue with Texas is we still don't know exactly who they are. Just because they haven't played anybody, that's not their fault. And one difference that's kind of in their favor versus years past is good but not elite Texas teams didn't handle their business against lower competition. They struggled against lower competition, and they'd fuss around and end up winning a game or whatever. This Texas team looks different from that. This Texas team looks like, hey, we've taken who we were last year and made it even better. And that's what we've seen so far. But it's so hard to judge, Josh, when you play a team like Mississippi State that's just completely inept at football. And so for me, I think that this is an opportunity for Texas to show that they are who we think they are. And right now we think that there might just be 2 elite teams in the country, that's Texas and Ohio State. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but there's an opportunity for both Ohio State and Texas to show that. So for me, even though it's a rivalry game, I think Texas, to show that they are who we think they are, needs to be closer to this point spread in the final score than merely beating their rival.
I think that's all fair. And when you look at the Michigan game, it's interesting because Texas's final stats weren't necessarily gaudy. I think rushing, I don't think anybody ran for 4 yards a carry. Passing the ball, they jumped up big on Michigan early and had really gaudy stats, but it actually slowed down. They ended up only about 6.8 yards per attempt. We usually say, Daniel, 7.5 yards per attempt is the mark of a competent passing offense. And Texas actually didn't end with that mark. And I think it says a lot about what Texas can be versus what maybe they are on average. And it's the problem we're seeing across college football right now. Defensively, we said this in the last video, I'll say it again. Defensive schemes have become very boom or bust because they've kind of realized that other styles of defense don't work on average against RPO. It's proven to be generally more effective, but it does mean that you can score in spurts in given games. And, when Texas was in their script early, Daniel, I know you've said this for years. You feel like Sarkisian has the best scripts in college football. I mean, Lane Kiffin may be close. His first 2 drives of a given game, you always have to be careful because they'll jump up on a 14-0 lead at wherever Kiffin's at quick on anybody, and then it's like you play a different team. Sarkisian is a better overall coach, I think, as a whole, and their team's more consistent, but his scripts are phenomenal. And their script against Michigan was excellent. And I say, again, Mississippi State, our system has 117th. They're really bad this year, so it is kind of just the Michigan game. But that's kind of the dichotomy, right? Is if you watch that game for the first quarter and a half into the second quarter when they got up big, that looked like an unstoppable juggernaut. But the second half is a real half. And Texas let off somewhat, but they weren't trying to let off that much. But still, I will say, in our relative performance metrics, Texas has the number 3 scoring offense and the number 2 scoring defense. They average 73% higher points per game than their opponents allow, 70% less points per game than their opponents have been averaging, and just across the board dominant. 30s, 40% advantages over every teams they played relatively. It's an excellent team. A better passing team they've been than a rushing team. I think some of that's due to competition and skill talent gaps. But it is an excellent football team, and I think one that, to your point, when they put it together, and the big thing to me is because they are so complete, because the defense looks like a real legit defense for the first time, they have the chance to be a team they haven't been when the defense has let them down, particularly in pass defense. But the caveat, of course, is they haven't played a good offense. In fact, I might go so far as to say, knowing their competition, they have not played a functional offense by a Power 5 standard. The problem is I'm not sure they are this week either. And that'll let me, if I can, Daniel, go ahead and transition to the model. So we have a model. You can model any 2 teams you want on collegefootballnerds.com. We do it for free, and I think there's a weekly limit, but if you create a sign-in, which is completely free, there's no personal information required, you can do as many as you want. The model predicts this game to be Texas 36.8, Oklahoma 11.5, so like 37-12 kind of game. The yards per play differential, though, is stark. 6.8 yards per play for Texas, 3.5 for Oklahoma is a pretty jarring difference. Something like 11 yards per attempt for Texas to 4.3. Daniel, it goes with what I was saying before. It doesn't really expect either team to run the ball very well. Texas and Oklahoma both about 3 yards a carry. For Oklahoma's sake, it's because of who they are offensively. For Texas's sake, it's because Oklahoma is a very good run defense. The problem in this game, and it's the problem I will say I have, Daniel, it's the passing defenses and the relative strengths of these teams. Texas has not played a team that can threaten them through the air, and I think that's going to be the big question for Texas in terms of are they going to win a national title. Is things do change defensively when you play teams that have a real quarterback. Texas ran into that a little bit last year. They've run into it for prior years, right? But in the bowl game, defenses that are really good get stressed in different ways. Georgia's had it happen to them a number of times. This is not that game, though. And Oklahoma's pass defense is just, they're really big in the front seven. Their pass defense has left something to be desired. They are not as good as I think people expected them to be. They are pretty average pass defense and a very good run defense. This Oklahoma team isn't good enough to stay on the field, in my view, with a Texas offense that has the amount of skill position talent that they have. They have a lot of explosive receivers on that roster. They've got Ewers likely back. I know Oklahoma probably will have a couple wide receivers back, probably will have Tatum back. I get that. But even then, I mean, they don't have, Bond and Wingo and Golden and Cook and Moore. It just, everybody that Texas has, and I know Texas has been banged up at running back, even with Blue. I just don't think it matters. So, as I said, the model had this game 37-12, more or less. I'm going to go ahead and give you my score prediction, Daniel. I have this game 31-10, Texas. I think it's close for a while. I think Texas gets a lead early out of their script somewhere in the second quarter, probably something like 17-3. Close. And at the end of the game, when Oklahoma has to start throwing to win, they're going to turn the ball over quickly or have, turnover and downs. And Texas is going to put it away and make it a 31-10 game and just kind of run away with it late. So, yeah, I mean, I like Texas to cover. I think they're a very good football team. I also think this year, I know anything can happen in a rivalry game. I think it's just a bad matchup, Daniel. I think Oklahoma's strengths are better against run-first teams. That's not who Texas is, and I think this is yet another chance for Texas to flex their muscles on the national stage.
I've got it a little slower scoring, 27-10, and I think part of that is just if you are so inclined in this modern era of college football, you can shorten a game to the point where it's pretty hard to get blown out if you're a competent team. We saw what happened to Alabama this weekend against Vanderbilt, in that Vanderbilt was snapping the ball with 2-3 seconds left on the clock, and they just melted it. The possessions, I think Alabama had 8 possessions in that game. A normal game in the past would be like 12 possessions. So I think if Oklahoma comes in knowing that they're outmanned, knowing they still have some injuries, knowing that they don't have a quarterback, at least not yet, they can shorten this game to the point where they might lose, they might get blown out, but they're not going to give up 40 points. And I think that that's the situation here. You know, I was talking earlier about Texas handling their business. It's one interesting game for me is the La Monroe game for Texas. They beat them, what was it, 51-3. How many people know that La Monroe beat James Madison this weekend? The JMU that dumped 63 on Ball State in a 63-7 win, or 70 on North Carolina 2 weeks before that. They beat them, so that's a team with a pulse. Texas hasn't played a lot. They've played one roster, and that's Michigan. I think this is an opportunity for Texas to play a roster and show that they're somebody. And it's interesting because both of us said this is the same situation a few weeks ago when Tennessee played Oklahoma. And we're like, I want to see what Tennessee can do. I don't think Oklahoma's going to win this game. And I want to see, but they still have a roster. And I want to see what Tennessee can do with that to see if it validates the blowouts of all the teams they've had against NC State and all these other teams. And to me, that game showed me a lot more that Tennessee wasn't a top 5 team, even though they got out of there with a win. In this one, I think it's a similar opportunity in that I don't expect Oklahoma to win this game. I don't expect Oklahoma to be ultra competitive against this. Again, this is a team that barely beat Houston, that struggled with what is a decent Tulane team. I want to see if Texas can go in there and handle their business, because if they don't, if they win this 17-10 or 23-14, it's going to at least plant a seed in my mind, kind of like it did with Tennessee, that maybe they're not that elite plus team that I think they are. But for now, 27-10, 30-10, somewhere in there is where I think it's going to land. And if that happens, it's going to validate who I think they are, and not give me any doubts. Give me one thought here, Josh, on your strategy if you're Oklahoma, knowing what you've got at quarterback and knowing who you have been maybe offensively to this point in the year. My opinion is I don't think that Oklahoma is going to sustain drives against Texas, and they need to really try to stress vertically, even though they got an inexperienced quarterback. Their only hope, in my opinion, of winning this game is catching Texas in a couple of really big plays.
It's tough because at some level, if you don't have enough healthy players, it's insane to be out your top 5 starting wide receivers, right? And
it really is.
Talking about their game against Auburn, they didn't have a viable receiving core. They didn't have a receiving core good enough to function at an SEC level, and it's injury related. And the scheme that they have, Daniel, is they got to get players healthy. I'm going to be honest; they cannot play and have any sort of wrinkle unless you've got guys that can actually get open and make a play. Right now they need maybe their offensive line to gel, get a touch healthier, get Tatum back. Maybe they can have a run game, and that gives you something with Hawkins and maybe running the zone read. Or you got to get 1 or 2 good receivers back. All you got to have, 1 or 2, and then you can at least throw some deep shots off that and try to get some cheap points. But you got to have somebody. And so I agree with you. I mean, I think, it's kind of a leading question, right? I mean, you're looking for the angle and saying that there's a scheme, but I guess to some degree I'm pushing back and saying it's not even a scheme. It's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmy and Joes. Oklahoma's got to get healthy, and they've got to find somebody that can either step up, or given the roster situation, really, it's just got to be somebody getting healthy enough to play and make an impact. And frankly, that's the one positive for Oklahoma. They could look like a really different team in a hurry. If they got all those wide receivers back, if the offensive line was suddenly healthy, this is truly a completely different offense. And what's interesting to me, Daniel, is I almost wonder if Hawkins is even the best starting quarterback if they have a real receiving core. Because the problem that they had with Arnold was turnovers and sort of trying to force plays. And if guys are open, sometimes a guy that's a little trigger happy suddenly looks like a completely different player. Those trigger happy, gunslinger quarterbacks are great when guys are open, and they are terrible when they're not. But I will also add on this other parting thought, Daniel, that I just thought was interesting. Going into the year, there was a lot of sort of consternation on, how much Texas would be challenged, there may be a 2-game season. But it's interesting to me that every team remaining on their schedule is coming off some version of a big win. Oklahoma's win against Auburn. Georgia turned things around against Auburn, different weeks, right? Vanderbilt upset Alabama. Florida blew out Central Florida. Arkansas upset Tennessee. Kentucky upset Ole Miss. Texas A&M just had a blowout win themselves. The whole schedule. Suddenly, this schedule for Texas looks a lot more challenging. So to the extent that we were saying they haven't really played anybody, that is not a ding. You can only play who you're playing. And we often say that when you play bad competition, blow them out, which is what Texas has done. But to that point, too, Texas's schedule is turning out to look like a pretty legitimate set of tests. And I think Texas is going to go through a run here in the SEC where, it's kind of put up or shut up. This is a reasonably challenging schedule. It's hard to run all the way through it. If they're the team we think they are, they're going to manage the schedule and be a playoff caliber team. I expect right now, fully expect Texas to be in the playoffs as a top 12 team. It'll be interesting to see if they can run the table with it. But yeah, Oklahoma, then on to Georgia. And then, a lot of games against teams that have clearly shown that they're capable of beating you. So it's going to be an interesting end of the year for Texas.
The interesting thing for Texas, though, is they can lose. I think they're the only remaining. They're the only remaining undefeated SEC team. They can lose a game and still get a bye. Like, they can lose 2 games and still get a bye, probably, because a lot of the teams that are going to fight for that other SEC championship game slot are going to be playing each other. So I think from that standpoint, it changes things a little bit. I still think that the schedule is kind of light because Arkansas, Kentucky, Florida, Vanderbilt, these are teams coming off of wins against teams that may or may not be, these teams may or not be who they were in those games. Meaning, I don't think Vanderbilt is that good. I think they're improved. I don't think they're a team that you can just sleepwalk through if you're Texas. I don't think Florida is that good. I think UCF sucks. I think Arkansas is very limited. Kentucky, same thing. Texas A&M, however, that might prove to be a game that actually boosts Texas's strength of schedule. And to your point, and to the point we always make, I don't care if you have a weak schedule. I just want you to dominate it if you want to be considered among the elites. So they still have all of that in front of them, even beyond this Oklahoma game. You can lose to Georgia, dominate the rest of your schedule, and I'm still going to say you're one of the top 3 teams in the country. So they've got a little bit of breathing room there. I'll give you a little disagreement on Arnold. I do think that they're a better offensive position with Hawkins just because you can grind out some points with him. Arnold was missing throws, like throwing several yards behind guys on wide receiver screens and stuff, really easy stuff. Was processing it slow and then just absolutely missing the throws. I have zero confidence in him running an offense with Ohio State's wide receivers. So I think that he might be another one of those mis-evals you talk about, given the timing of when he hit the market coming out of high school. But either way, I just think that right now Oklahoma is too beat up to win this game. But I'm long on Venables at OU. I'm long on Oklahoma being perfectly capable of winning championships coming out of the SEC. Give me one more parting shot on this one before we wrap it up.
Yeah, you always one more shot, man. You just want me to keep talking. So I'll just end it with this, guys. If you like the channel, if you haven't watched before, please like and subscribe. Share it when you talk football. It does a lot for us. This is a labor of love for us. If you watch our top 10 video, I've got stuff going on personally, but we do this because we enjoy it and we try to continue it. And yeah, the more you can do to support our channel just by sharing it and commenting on the video, sharing a little positivity this week would be a good thing. It's always appreciated.
All right, y'all, you heard the man. Go back to your message board, go back to your Facebook and put a link to this video there and help us out, especially if you like what we got to say. You Oklahoma and Texas fans, if you are looking for more content from me, I think I'm going to make an appearance on RJ Young's show this week. He's a friend of the program. He did some talk this summer with us. He and I had a chat, did an Oklahoma preview. So far, I'm proving to be more right on Oklahoma this year than he was, but should be a good conversation and it should come out this week as well. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week. God bless.